Right now, you're reading this with a roof over your head, food within reach, and 10,000 years of human knowledge sitting in your pocket. Now picture this instead. You open your eyes and it's 10,000 years ago. No roof, no pocket, no idea what a year even is. Welcome to your new life. Let's call you Thok. First question, where even are you? At this point in history, there are only around 5 million humans on the entire planet. Today, there are over 8 billion. That means for every person alive back then, there are roughly 1,600 people alive right now. In your entire life, you might meet a few hundred people. Total. Most humans who will ever exist haven't been born yet and won't be, for thousands of years. Second question, what's the weather like? You're living right at the end of the last ice age. For over 100,000 years, huge parts of the planet were locked under ice. Then, in a geological blink, it warmed up fast. Glaciers retreated. Forests spread north. Sea levels rose so quickly that land which used to connect Britain to mainland Europe slowly disappeared underwater. Thok doesn't know any of this is happening. Thok just knows the weather has been getting strangely good lately. Now, your daily life. You wake up in a shelter made of branches, hides, and whatever else was lying around, in a group of maybe 25 to 50 people, almost all of them related to you somehow. There's no concept of going to work. There's just finding food every single day together. And here's the surprising part. Anthropologist Richard Lee spent years studying a modern hunter-gatherer group, the hoansi of the Kalahari Desert, and found they spent around 20 hours a week getting food. 20 hours. That's less than a part-time job for your entire food supply. The rest of the time goes to talking, resting, making tools, and telling stories around the fire. Your diet is more varied than almost anyone alive today. Wild plants, nuts, roots, seasonal fruit, and meat whenever someone gets lucky. No bread, no farms. Farming is only just beginning in a tiny handful of places on Earth, and it hasn't reached your world yet. You're probably not doing any of this alone either. Thok likely has a companion. A dog. This might surprise you, but dogs had already been part of human life for thousands of years by this point. Near Bonn in Germany, archaeologists found a grave from around 14,000 years ago containing a man, a woman, and a dog, buried together. Evidence shows the dog had been seriously ill, and someone cared for it for weeks before it died. Someone, 14,000 years ago, nursed a sick dog back to health, and then buried it like family. So if Thok has a dog curled up by the fire tonight, that bond isn't some primitive novelty. It's already ancient. What about the giants? A few thousand years earlier, Thok's ancestors might have hunted woolly mammoths, but by now, across most of the mainland, the great Ice Age giants, mammoths, giant sloths, saber-toothed cats, are mostly gone, wiped out by some mix of climate change and human hunting. There's one strange exception. On a remote island called Wrangel Island in the Arctic Ocean, a small population of woolly mammoths will keep surviving, completely cut off for another 6,000 years after this. Thok will never see one, but somewhere out there, the very last mammoths on Earth are still walking around for thousands of years more. And Thok isn't even using the same tools his ancestors used forever. The bow and arrow is relatively new technology, becoming common across many parts of the world right around this time. For Thok, this isn't some ancient relic. It's the latest upgrade, the smartphone of 10,000 years ago. It means hunting from a distance more safely, more often, with less risk for more food. Now here's the part that should genuinely break your brain. While people exactly like Thok are living this way, hunting and gathering, with no farms, no pottery, and no writing, in what's now southeastern Turkey, people living almost exactly like Thok are building something enormous. It's called Gobekli Tepe. Massive stone pillars, some weighing over 10 tons, carved with images of foxes, scorpions, and vultures arranged in circles. It was discovered by German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, who began excavating it in 1994, and it's now considered the oldest known monumental structure on Earth. Hunter-gatherers, people without farms, without metal tools, without the wheel, organized enough labor to drag 10-ton stones into place and carve them by hand. Everything we used to assume, farming first, then cities, then religion, then monuments, Gobekli Tepe puts in question. Maybe the order was the other way around. Okay, back to your life as Thok. How long do you actually get to live? This is where it gets complicated. Researchers Michael Gurven and Hillard Kaplan analyzed data across hunter-gatherer populations in 2007, and the picture isn't what most people guess. Childhood is genuinely dangerous. A significant number of children don't make it to adulthood, but if you survive to age 15, your odds change dramatically. Many adults in these populations live into their 60s and 70s, so Thok isn't dropping dead at 30, like the old myths say. If Thok makes it through childhood, Thok might live a genuinely long life, surrounded by grandparents and even great-grandparents. What would you actually miss from your old life? Modern medicine, obviously. A broken bone, an infection, even a bad tooth, these can become genuinely life-threatening, with nothing to treat them. And privacy. There basically isn't any. You eat, sleep, and exist within arm's reach of your entire community, every single day for your whole life. But here's what you might not miss as much as you'd think. No traffic, no bills, no deadlines, alarms, or notifications, ever. Your sense of direction, your hearing, your ability to read the landscape, all of it would be sharper than almost anyone alive today because you'd need it to survive every single day. So, would you actually survive if you woke up as Thok tomorrow? Probably not without years to adapt. But the bigger question isn't whether you'd survive. It's how much of what we call civilization, farming, writing, cities, actually came after people like Thok had already figured out cooperation, loyalty, art, and even monumental architecture. We tend to think of 10,000 years ago as primitive, simple, barely human, almost. But Gobekli Tepe says otherwise. The people who built it had no farms and no metal, and they still looked up at a blank hillside and decided to build something that would outlast them by 11,000 years. Maybe Thok isn't so different from you after all.